Hey guys, do you ever have one of those days when you just suck at chess and you make errors that you would not normally make? Well, it's one of those days today. Been on a bit of a downward trajectory recently, just bouncing above 1400 right now. I really want to get back over 1500. And what I need to do is I need to slow down. I need to play when I'm in the right state of mind, all that kind of stuff. So, first game I played today, I actually lost to somebody rated 1180, something like that. It was all a decent start. They played with 97 accuracy, and mine was just a bit poorer. So, what I want to show you today is my second game. Absolute howler in this one, but good example of what to do when you're behind. So, e4, e5, knight to c3, the Vienna. Knight to f6. Now my opponent plays really accurately for the first few moves. I mean, this is all book stuff. f4 Vienna gambit, and they think for a minute and then play d5, which is by far the strongest move here. So, and they're rated just under 1400. Okay, so I take on e5, knight takes, and knight to f3. This is important, guard c squares from the queen coming out. Bishop comes out, queen e2, this is all book. Knight takes c3, b takes c3. Okay, so it's an interesting board already. We have black castles and now d4. I mean, d4 is just crying out. Build a dark squared pawn chain against this dark squared bishop, which is the only real developed piece. Bishop retreats. Now I put my queen onto f2. So the idea is actually I want to get my queen to g3, then with ideas of playing the bishop up to h6. With the queen on there, this pawn is pinned, and so the threat is queen takes g7 mate, and if they push the pawn, they lose the exchange. Bishop takes rook. So that's the idea. Black now strikes back at my advanced e5 pawn, and this is where it all goes horribly wrong. Bishop to d3, this is crying out as well, so I've got ideas of using both of my bishops down here against the king, and we have takes, takes, and can you see, how long did I take over that particular move? 15 seconds it took me. Right, can you see the very slight oversight that I made as white? I'll give you a few seconds. No, I won't. Hanging queen, boom, king takes rook, and now my king can't castle. I'm down 4 points in material. I'm down a queen for a rook, and it's looking horrible. So now what do you do? Move 12, you've just blundered your queen against somebody rated actually only 40 points lower, right? Okay, so what do? You have to dig in, you have to find resources, you have to trust the fact that your opponent is going to get that rush of excitement and adrenaline, and try, if you can, to find a way to use it against them. So, you have to come up with a plan. Any plan is better than no plan at all. So, what do we have? Well, let's look at the board, right? I have at least activity, right? So black has an active queen, okay? This bishop is not great because it's staring into these pawns and can't get through here and can't go here and can't go through here, right? So what's this bishop is poor. The rook is still in the box, the knight is still in the box. This bishop, does have some options, right? On the other hand, to my credit, both my bishops are kind of looking okay. I've got a nice advanced knight there. My rook's getting ready to come out. I'll do an artificial castle. And, this rook as well has options. So at least I have some initiative. I have some way of getting into the game. So I retreat my knight now to block the queen. And now bishop comes out. So attacking the pinned piece. Now my knight is going to be lost. So I drop my light squared bishop back to defend, takes. Okay, now black is now just threatening to grind me down with equal exchanges and end up with basically a queen versus rook ending, which I'm going to lose. So when the game reads that way, you cannot allow a war of attrition. You cannot get involved in that, okay? There's nothing I can do to save the pawn on c2, so I just get my rook onto the open file. Black now plays c5, just wanting to bust through here, just being, just keeping the pressure on. King g1 now, pawn takes, and there's no point in recapturing, because then that just allows bishop takes with check and fork on my rook. It really is desperate times. But now bishop to c3. Now, can you see the point of bishop to c3? Okay, so the idea is that I play something like bishop g4, hit the queen, and if the queen should take the bishop, I have rook f8 checkmate. Okay, and that's because this knight is still there and it's blocking in the rook, so the back rank is currently unguarded. Okay, we have takes on c3, and that comes with check, so I have to move my king to h1. Now the knight comes out, foiling my plan. All right, and now the back rank is guarded, so now rook f8 is not an option anymore. So we have to change our plans, of course. Now what I'd love to do is play bishop takes d5 with a discovery on the queen and check. However, this falls to the very simple queen takes d5. Therefore, my next move, rook a, comes across to d1. Now at this point my opponent should have gone, what's the point of that move? And he should be thinking about this. This is the thing. You need to be thinking about, okay, my queen is in line with a rook. So just talk to yourself, tell yourself these things in the game. My queen's in line with a rook, so there are ideas of discovery, right? Can the discovery come with check? Yes, it can. Okay. Can I get out of that? Yes, I could, apart from this, okay? The information's all there, you just need to decipher it. h6, a quiet move and completely misses the point. So now bishop takes d5 check, right? Black would love to trade the queen back for a rook and be in a roughly equal position, but can't because they're in check. So it has to be queen takes bishop, rook takes bishop, and now we are back on level pegging, right? This is just this effect that we see over and over again when you are in front, keeping your evil on and just maintaining your discipline, keep the pressure on your opponent and watch your back. Be doubly careful, right? When your opponent is against the ropes, you need to be super careful. Okay, so the point of h6 obviously is it's giving the king an escape square, but that's it, but missed the major threat. Okay, so now we have knight to d4, attacking this pawn. I don't really have I could play rook f2, and then if knight takes, I could capture there. In the end, I decided to play bishop c5 and try and swap off the bishops. And now we have knight to there. Now I have to be careful here, and I see this, and again, it's pattern recognition. Tactics is primarily about knowing the patterns and then spotting the patterns, okay? So here, I can see that there's a fork threat by the knight, and I obviously cannot allow that. There is an in-between move though. I can capture the bishop now, because my bishop is still guarding the e3 square, right? So now I have a takes bishop, and my pawns are kind of vulnerable here, but so now I get out of the knight fork. So now my rooks are too far apart to be forked, and these pawns are kind of sitting ducks right now, but so is this guy here. Okay, so he comes after one rook. That's not a big problem. I come back and attack c3. Now rook takes a2, and I have to be very careful here. It's very tempting to grab the pawn, but then of course rook a1, and the only thing I could do would be to block with my rooks in sequence, lose my rooks and get checkmated. So that can't happen. So now it's time to be prophylactic and safe and create an escape square for my king. Rook comes across now and grabs g2. Now, sharp situation here. I'm not really worried about, see, rooks when they're right up next to a king, when they're one diagonal away from a king, are not a huge threat, and he's only got a knight to back it up. It's going to be very, very hard to get checkmate in this kind of situation. Open board, knight and a rook. I just need to be careful. Okay, so now I can grab the pawn, because this is the thing, the rook cannot check my king. Can't go here or here, because it just gets et. Okay? And now rook to g3. Now can you see the tactical error here? We're talking pattern recognition. The rook wants this pawn. Fine. Okay? But what has black missed here? It's a barrage pin situation. Rook b to b3. And now I'm threatening the knight. I've got 2 attackers against the knight, only 1 defender, right? So that's a barrage, or overwhelming the piece, okay? However, if the knight were to move, I get the rook, and we simplify. And I've got a rook against the knight. Yes, I'm 3 pawns down, but my rook is going to have no trouble capturing these pawns, and I should be in a good position. So we have rook takes pawn. There's nothing else that can really be done. King g1, rook g3 now, and I've already planned king to f2. This is not really an option. This fork here comes with check, yes, but then I grab the rook. He grabs the rook, and I've got a solo rook. So easy to sweep up these final pawns with rook and king, and hopefully go on to win. So he loses the knight. Rook has to move away, check, and it doesn't last an awful lot longer here. I can grab the pawn on g7, go up again. Kings love to be in the face of those rooks, and the rook can't do anything. And rook comes to here, simple checkmate on the back rank. Wow. So very, very satisfying, that one. Because I clearly completely blundered earlier on in the game, but it gave me a little bit of satisfaction to get my way back, win my opponent's queen back. How many times do we see that, right? One player blunders their queen, and the other player doubles down with their determination, their concentration, their focus, and you end up losing the queen as well, and end up in a queenless game. So, yeah, clearly I was rushing at the start, really wasn't paying proper attention to the game, but satisfying conclusion. I won't bother you with the first game. It was just very dull and very depressing. But this one, good. It's a good feeling. All right, so yeah, again, there's another lesson there. When you're against the ropes, dig in, dig your heels in, and just look for a killer blow. Because being down in material is not all it's about. Right? There are other kinds of imbalances on the board. There are other differences. What do you have? Do you have mobility? Do you have space? Do you have initiative? Make the most of the imbalances that are in your favor. Try and constrain your opponent. But most of all, at this level, because we are human, we are fallible, we get overexcited, we get the adrenaline rush. Try and take advantage of that. Yeah. And you never know. You may be able to pull one out of the bag like this. Brilliant. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to Chess Bootcamp if you haven't yet subscribed. I'll see you later.